I mean, I have a very kind of expansive notion of love. So for me, everything I've been talking about, I would say, has been talking about love. Maybe people, when they use that word, tend to think about like a particular kind of romantic relationship or familial relationship. And those are wonderful, but like I would think of what you'd classify under that kind of broader category as being much, much wider. So when I talk about relationships, yeah, I mean all those relationships, but also like the relationships that you have with friends, with people you're in service to other creatures. I think that if you have an expansive understanding of love, it's not just those relationships, which again are kind of very prime examples of the potency of what that is all about. But when you can see it in broader terms, love is a kind of bigger, I think, orienting force that is a bringing together in a deep mutuality of two things, two entities, two people, two beings, and that can take a lot of different forms. But one way of thinking about all this as well is that, yes, again, love is all of the romance and the poetry, but in a sense, it's the opposite of dissolution, of disconnection, fragmentation, alienation, breaking things apart, entropy, right? Love is bringing together into a greater whole out of parts that themselves didn't contain the fullness of what they engender between the two. So love is the synergy that, you know, binds everything into something more comprehensive, more significant. And in that sense, everything that we are is the product of a deep kind of loving relationality, in a sense, at multiple scales of existence. And I speak metaphorically, but in some senses only lightly metaphorically, to say that the atoms that come together into molecules are engaged in a kind of coming together that represents this. And those molecules coming together into, what will be the tissues of organs in an organism, or an organelle in a cell, and those cells coming together into a collective that creates a multicellular being like myself. There is a process at work in the universe of things coming together and generating wholes that are greater than the sum of their parts. And I think we experience that at the human level as love. And with all the rich potencies of, interpersonal social relationship and intersubjective depth and the deep feelings that are mediated by our whole evolutionary history. But that process in some form or another is playing out at all these different scales. And when we can see our very existence is sort of, in some ways, the tip of the spear of this process over evolutionary history, then I think you can see yourself as sort of embodied love, if that makes any sense. And again, in a context where people feel the draw towards a kind of meaninglessness, kind of orientation or understanding of their existence in a careless cosmic void in which we are just hurtling through space without goal or direction, I think that framing this reality in this way is essential, because that's not the story at all, right? And when you can re-understand your own self as actually being the product of love growing and complexifying into deeper and deeper shades over the course of time, I think that's a very profound and even sublime way of looking at the world and yourself in it. So all that's to say, yes, romantic relationships, friendships, love, great, but we're all bound up in loving relationships at multiple scales, and when we feel flourishing, it's because something about that field is activated in us. And I think this is how I conceive anyway of sort of the biggest sense of human purpose, which is how can you be in service to whatever that is? You know, the very process that led to all of that love growing into different kinds of organisms and ecosystems and deepening consciousnesses. You know, how can you be in service to that force as it is developing things in the universe? I think that you feel it organically and intuitively when you love, when you are in ecstatic joy of another person, when you're appreciating someone's company, when you're in dialogue with a person and deepening into their subjective experience and they're deepening into yours, and when you connect with an animal or a pet, or when you plant a tree or work your garden. These are all, you know, rich ways of being a kind of cultivator of that process at many levels. And I think the way that we can be most of service to that is kind of vocational calling. So